Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. From July 4th through August 26th, if you use this promo code, you will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a set of all 4 Commander 2019 decks. Also, there is another way to enter where no purchase is necessary. See the description below for full details. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and it's that time of the week again to go over the results from the big tournaments of the weekend. This past weekend was the first time we saw Core Set 2020 actually legal in Standard as well as Modern. We'll talk about that today. 3 big events that we're going to cover. The Star City Games Open, which was a Standard event. There was a Star City Games Standard Classic as well, and a Star City Games Modern Classic. We'll look at the top 8s, some of the deck lists, and we'll have a special emphasis on cards from Core Set 2020, as well as cards from Modern Horizons that performed well this weekend. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Here's your top 8 for the Star City Games Standard Open. First place, Mono Red Aggro. Second place, Mono Blue Aggro, but it's more of a tempo deck. We'll look at that one in a moment. Third place, Temur Elementals. Fourth and fifth place, Orzhov Vampires. Sixth place, Bant Ramp. Seventh place, Boros Feather. 8th place, Esper Hero, or Esper Tempo, whichever you'd like to call it. Let's take a look at that first place Mono Red Aggro deck to start things off. Here it is. I'm a little surprised we didn't see more Mono Red Aggro in the top 8. I mean, this deck did win the tournament, but typically the first weekend of a new standard, a lot of players will fall back on the tried and true aggro deck and try to take advantage of players that could be playing some slower strategies with the new cards. But nevertheless, here is the deck, and you'll see a lot of familiar faces here. Runaway Steamkin, one of the engine cards. Goblin Chain Whirler, Gitu Lava Runner. Your direct damage spells are here. Lightning Strike, Shock, Skewer the Critics. You get Light Up the Stage to see more cards. Only 1 Experimental Frenzy in the main of this build, but 3 in the sideboard. Now, there are some cards from Core Set 2020 that are playing a role here. Let's take a look at them. Chandra Spitfire, Ember Hauler, replacing Wizard's Lightning and at least some of the wizards in the deck. Sideboard, Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, and Fry. Pay attention to cards like Fry. You're going to see a lot of these color hosing cards in sideboards today. Some other successful copies of the deck this weekend were running Leyline of Combustion out of the sideboard. Okay, second place, Mono Blue Aggro, or actually Mono Blue Tempo. One thing you're going to notice is this is very similar to the Mono Blue Tempo deck that we know. 4 Merfolk Trickster, 2 Terramander, 4 Siren Storm Tamer, 4 Tempest Djinn all in this build. 4 Curious Obsession, 4 Dive Down, you get a Negate, you get 4 Ops, 3 Spell Pierce, 3 Wizard's Retort. Okay, so what is really different here? Well, there are actually some key cards. One really big card is Spectral Sailor, a 1 casting cost 1/1 flyer, even with Flash. Pay a blue and 3 to draw a card. Once this is on the battlefield, your opponent has to react. They can't play passively, or you're just going to run away with the game eventually with card advantage. Unsummon also shows up here. Out of the sideboard, Cerulean Drake, Ether Gust, and Tail's End. Third place, Temur Elementals. Now, this is a new deck, and it has a lot of Core Set 2020 cards in it because, of course, Temur Elementals is one of the draft archetypes in the set, and they did give us some powerful cards to put together a deck. There are a few cards here that were already existing, like Lightning Strike and Shock, but you are going to see a lot of new ones here. Let's look at them. Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, Chandra, Awakened Inferno, Cavalier of Thorns, Leafkin Druid, Overgrowth Elemental, Creeping Trailblazer, Omnith Locust of the Royal, Risen Reef, fantastic card. Temple of Mystery is in the mana base. Sideboard, Shifting Ceratops, Ether Gust, Flame Sweep, and Fry. Some copies are running Temple of Epiphany in the main deck as part of the mana base as well. Also, some decks are running Veil of Summer in the sideboard. Fourth place, Orzhov Vampires. Now, this is a deck made up mostly of cards that already existed, but as we know, Orzhov Vampires has been kind of shaky throughout many of these standard seasons. There are some key cards, though, that have really pushed it. Let's look at some of the existing ones first, though. Adanto Vanguard, always a solid card. You have Sky Marcher Aspirant. Gideon Blackblade, a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants are there for Planeswalkers. Cast Down, 2 copies of that, a copy of Mortify, 4 Legion's Landings. But what are the cards from Core Set 2020 that actually makes this a deck that could be in the top 8? Sorin Imperious Bloodlord and Knight of the Ebon Legion. Both fantastic cards here. Noxious Grasp in the sideboard. Also, some copies of the deck that are performing well are running Icon of Ancestry. and Temple of Silence in the main. Sometimes this figure shows up in the sideboard. We'll go ahead and skip the 5th place Orzhov Vampire deck because it's very similar to the one we just looked at. 6th place, though, is Bant Ramp. Now, this is the mass manipulation variant, even though they didn't call it out in the title of this one. But overall, the Bant Ramp decks that performed the best this weekend were the mass manipulation versions. Now, this is a deck that was very successful last season, but it does have some changes with Core Set 2020. Let's look at some of the existing cards quickly first. Frilled Mystic, a couple of those, 4 Hydroid Krasis, a lot of Mana Dorks, 4 Incubation Druid, 4 Llanowar Elves, 4 Paradise Druid, you know the drill here. Then you have your Planeswalkers like Nissa, Who Shakes the World, Teferi Time Raveler, Shalai Voice of Plenty is a key creature here, 2 in the main, 1 Entrancing Melody in the main, 3 Mass Manipulation. So what does Core Set 2020 bring us? Well, not much in this particular build, Voracious Hydra in the main. Sideboard though, Shifting Ceratops and Devout Decree. Now some copies of this deck that did perform well this weekend are running a few other cards from Core Set 2020 in the main, Draw from Dreams and Temple of Mystery. Other sideboard options we've seen this week are things like Cerulean Drake, Ether Gust, Veil of Summer, and even Leyline of Sanctity. 7th place was Boros Feather. Here's another deck that hasn't changed too much, but there's at least one really big addition to this particular build. So as you can see, Adato Vanguard, Dreadhorde Arcanist, Legion Warboss, 10th District Legionnaire, Feather the Redeemed, 4 copies of her, of course. Also, Defiant Strike is here, Reckless Rage, Shock. Again, it doesn't feel like a ton has changed, but let's see what is new. God's Willing, huge card for this deck, makes it that much better. Temple of Triumph is here too. Fry is in the sideboard. 8th place was Esper Hero or Esper Tempo, very popular and successful deck last season. And as you can see here again, the core pieces are intact, but there are some changes. 3 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, 3 Teferi Time Raveler in this build, but no Liliana Dreadhorde General. 4 Thought Erasures are here though, 1 Kaya's Wrath, 2 Enter the God Eternals, 1 Command the Dreadhorde, 3 Oath of Kaya, 2 Tyrant Scorn, so on and so forth. But what do we get that is new? Tomebound Lich is a huge upgrade for this deck. Not that it really needed it, right? 1/3 for 3. Death Touch, Lifelink really slows things down nicely. When it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, you get to loot. This card is nuts. Disfigure is also here in the main. Sideboard, Ether Gust and Noxious Grasp. Some decks are running Temple of Silence in the main. This one wasn't, though. Now we'll look at a couple decks that do go beyond the top 8. Simic Nexus came in 10th place. We're going to look at a different Simic Nexus deck when we get to the Classic 2 because they actually have some pretty different looks. This one is a little more Planeswalker heavy. The other one we'll look at later is a little more creature heavy. But of course, you know what to expect from Simic Nexus decks. 4 Wilderness Reclamation in this case, 4 Nexus of Fate, 4 Root Snare, 4 Search for Iskanta, so on and so forth. As far as the Planeswalkers here, 4 Tamiyo Collector of Tales, 1 Nissa Who Shakes the World, 1 Narset Parter of Vales. Let's take a look at what the new set brings though. This copy of the deck, not a lot. Temple of Mystery in the main. Sideboard though, a little more variety. Mu Yanling Skydancer, Shifting Ceratops, Ether Gust, and Veil of Summer. Simic Flash came in 13th place. This is a pretty cool deck. As you can imagine, it is a Simic deck with a lot of Flash creatures. It does feel like a tempo deck again. There's a lot of counter magic backup. As far as Flash creatures go, there's some new ones, but the existing ones are things like Frilled Mystic and Merfolk Trickster. Then when it comes to some of the counter options, you have Essence Scatter, Negate, Sinister Sabotage, Syncopate. Let's take a look at the cards from Core Set 2020 here. Quite a few actually. Brineborn Cutthroat, Spectral Sailor shows up here too. Nightpack Ambusher, Unsummon is here, and Temple of Mystery. Shifting Ceratops is in the sideboard. Some copies of this deck are running Mu Yanling Skydancer actually in the main, so that's something to watch out for. And other options for sideboards that are in other variants of this deck that performed well, Ether Gust and Veil of Summer. Here are your results for the Star City Games Standard Classic event. First place as well as 5th place was Bant Mass Manipulation Ramp. Again, they gave them 2 different names, but basically the same deck. 2nd place as well as 8th place, Orzhov Vampires. 3rd place, Esper Hero or Esper Tempo again. 4th place, the only deck in this list that did not run any cards from Core Set 2020, a copy of Azorius Aggro. 6th place, Jund Dinosaurs. And 7th place, Temur Elementals. So we won't look at some of the decks that we already saw from the open, but I do want to point out a couple that are here. First, let's look at that Jund Dinosaur deck. Here it is. This is actually pretty sweet. Again, kind of like Vampires, if you wanted another crack at a tribe from one of the older sets in the standard environment. Well, here's a chance for dinosaurs to do well this season. As you can see here, a lot of the dinosaurs we know and love, right? Ripjaw Raptor, Regisaur Alpha, Commune with Dinosaurs is here, 4 copies of that. What does the core set do to make this a deck that can see top 8 play? 3 big cards here in the main, Rotting Regisaur, Marauding Raptor, and Shifting Ceratops. Sideboard, you find Noxious Grasp, Flame Sweep, Fry, and Veil of Summer. Okay, we'll go beyond the top 8 and look at the 15th place Simic Nexus deck, and I wanted to point this one out because it is very different from the one we looked at earlier. Unlike the previous one and a lot of these type of decks you're used to seeing, you don't get that regular Nexus of Fate package. When it comes to non-creature, non-planeswalker, non-land spells in the main, you get 4 Growth Spiral and 4 Nexus of Fate, that's it. No Wilderness Reclamation, no Root Snare, so on and so forth. But what you do get here is a stronger creature package, including some of the new creatures. Existing ones though, 4 Hydroid Krasis, 4 Llanowar Elves are there. This really doubles as a ramp deck that can go even deeper post-sideboard with 3 copies of Mass Manipulation. For Planeswalkers, 4 Nissa Who Shakes the World, 3 Tamiyo Collector of Tales. Let's look at the cards from Core Set 2020. Cavalier of Gales is here, Cavalier of Thorns, Leafkin Druid, Risen Reef again, Temple of Mystery in the mana base. Sideboard cards include Cerulean Drake, Ether Gust, and Veil of Summer. Alright, let's talk a little Modern with the Star City Games Modern Classic event. Here's your top 8. Eldrazi Tron came in first. Humans came in second and third. Burn came in fourth. Is It Phoenix came in 5th and 7th. Colorless Eldrazi came in 6th. Azorius Control came in 8th. Remember, this is the first week since they banned Bridge from Below. No Hogak decks in the top 8 today. Let's take a look at some of the decks that were running cards from Modern Horizons and or Core Set 2020. This is the first place Humans deck, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these deck lists because you're probably familiar with them for the most part, but I do want to call out the Modern Horizons cards that played a role here. Sunbaked Canyon and Waterlogged Grove in the main, so just mana-based cards. Sideboard Plague Engineer and Collector Oof. 4th place Burn deck had a card from Modern Horizons, but again, just a mana-based card. Everything else is pretty typical, but you will find 4 copies of Sunbaked Canyon. Is It Phoenix? This is the one that came in 5th place. This deck is adopting cards from Modern Horizons, we already knew that, but there's also a Core Set 2020 card in this sideboard. Let's see what's going on here. 5 cards from Modern Horizons in the main, Force of Negation, Lava Dart, Magmatic Sinkhole, Aria of Flame, and Fiery Islet. Some copies of this deck run the Aria of Flames in the sideboard, and also some will run some in the side, some in the main too. Sideboard cards in this deck, though, include Shenanigans, another copy of Force of Negation, and another copy of Magmatic Sinkhole. And here's that Core Set 2020 card, 2 copies of Fry in the side. Beyond that, there was an Is It Phoenix deck that came in 13th place that was running a copy of Chandra Acolyte of Flame in the sideboard. Azorius Control came in 8th place. We'll look at the card from Modern Horizons in just a second. Your Planeswalker suite for this particular build is 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 3 Narset Parter of Veils, 1 Teferi Hero of Dominaria, 2 Teferi Time Raveler. There are 2 copies of Force of Negation here in the main, though. We'll go beyond the top 8 to Grixis Urza, which came in 10th place. This is a Whir of Invention deck. It also runs the Sword of the Meek Thopter Foundry combo. These decks are gaining some traction. There are some key cards from Modern Horizons, including the one that's in the title. Let's take a look at them. As you would imagine, Urza Lord High Artificer, Goblin Engineer is here, Arkham's Astrolabe, and Prismatic Vista. The sideboard has Dead of Winter. Not in this particular version, but some copies of this deck do go with Plague Engineer in the sideboard. 15th place is Azorius Spirits. There's actually a lot more changes than I would have imagined for this deck because of Modern Horizons. Of course, you can see the deck list. A lot of the key cards are the same, but let's look at what Modern Horizons does add. Giver of Runes, Unsettled Mariner, Force of Negation, and Waterlogged Grove. That concludes our recap of the weekend. Until next time, though, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.